Thank you very much. When I was preparing this message for my dear friend Francine, I went over a number of things in my head, and something kept standing out to me, and so I'm going to talk about that. The word statuesque. I don't know about you, but the word I seem to read most often associated with Francine York is statuesque. Prior to last week's shocking news, statuesque would be used to describe the unsinkable Ms. York in run-ups to her many interviews. And since her untimely departure last week, tributes to her remarkable life continue to use the word statuesque. I don't know about you, but statuesque seems to be the most appropriate word to describe Francine York. Francine was a giant among giants. Never the leading lady in the mold of the movie stars of her youth, Francine nonetheless carried herself with the grace, the stature, the ambiance of America's traditional ideal of the ultimate movie star. She was, in short, statuesque. Long ago, I got used to the thrill of being on Francine's arm when we flitted to parties and restaurants and dinners and events. The thrill would actually come in threes. First, just entering a place would draw stares and awes and whispers about the beautiful woman who entered the room. Then the thrill would continue as the staff tripped over themselves to ensure that Ms. York would be given preferential treatment at the best table in the restaurant with the best views. And finally, when she would excuse herself to the restroom, throngs of fans would rush over to me and whisper things like, "She's famous, isn't she?" And "I know I've seen her somewhere." My responses would be to probe just a bit about where they were remembering her from. And that way, in a few short words, I could build on the legend that these fans had in their heads so that he or she went away knowing they were in on a very private and special secret of seeing one of their favorite stars up close and personal. She was statuesque. How else do you describe someone who, in the face of more rejection than successes in her drive to obtain roles, never lost her composure and never lost her confidence? She never lost her drive. She never lost her love of the job. And above all, never, not once, not even in her least pleasant hours, did she lose her love and respect for the fans responsible for her rise to success to begin with. Statuesque. It takes a great deal of luck to get that lucky break and jump to the top in Hollywood. And more often than not, those who don't pay their dues on the way up fall faster and harder on the way back. Francine never took her success for granted. She knew at a young age, back in Minnesota, that she was someone special and that she was someone destined for a great life. She often felt the hand of destiny when she would describe her life, from surviving a near-fatal swimming pool drowning around the age of 10, to finding herself face to face with the right person at the right time, at the right place as she built her career. She could have, on more than one occasion, taken that lucky break, but she chose instead to let her talent and her work speak for her, not her irresistible attraction that powerful men were drawn to. Statuesque. She was a beautiful woman whose career paralleled at a time when it was impossible to become a celebrity for the sake of being a celebrity, like we have with reality TV today. Like her home state politician, Hubert H. Humphrey, who rose to the vice presidency of the United States and came this close to defeating Richard Nixon in 1968 in the presidential contest, wrote to her. She, like he, was from Minnesota, and he praised her work ethic that only someone in a second-generation immigrant family could learn. And Vice President Humphrey also wrote in a personal letter of appreciation that as her career took off, he praised her for honoring her beloved Minnesota with such grace, talent, and dignity. And that, my friends, is statuesque. Francine was no saint. Who of us is? But to my knowledge, she never sold out. Any relationships she had with the powerful, and you can read about this in her own words when her biography is ultimately printed, were consensual and definitely on Francine's terms. Nobody called the shots for Francine. In films, Elvis taught her how to shoot a bow and arrow. Jerry Lewis took her along on 6 of his rowdy romps in the movies. On television, she was beloved by producers Red Skelton, Irwin Allen, and dozens of other powerful producers who kept her working well beyond what at that time was the typical shelf life of a beautiful woman, which was around 30. Many expected this former Miss Minnesota to be considered too old to work beyond her early 30s. But she was exactly 30 when she had her first billing as guest star on a television program, and that program was Lost in Space. She was guest star as the noble Neolani of the Condor Nation of women warriors. With roles like this, or as Roddy McDowell's mole on Batman, or as the statue of the goddess Venus brought to life by Endora on Bewitched, or dozens of other memorable roles, Francine found nearly a half-century of work on the small screen, crushing stereotypes and intriguing audiences up through last year, until finally her health began to compete with her ability to act. Statuesque. As Prince would sing, if the elevator tries to take you down, go crazy, push a higher floor. This was, in many ways, Francine's mantra. As I mentioned previously, she loved, loved, loved her friends, family, and fans. Rob here on the second row, I would say, was her very best friend. He had no equal in his devotion, dedication, and companionship. I met Francine about 15 years ago. At that time, I was about 100 pounds heavier than I am now. And as many of you in this room know, Francine was never shy to dispense health advice or what she thought of people that might be 100 pounds overweight. Sometimes I would avoid her because I was embarrassed that I had not followed her health advice. Ultimately, however, I learned it was just that. It was advice. But her love for me was stronger than her drive to save me from myself. Ultimately, I dropped 100 pounds. I've kept it off for almost a decade. I now pump iron 3 to 4 times a week, and every time I visit, I made sure to wear a muscle shirt so she could admire my physique. That said, it takes a real friend to risk a friendship when someone is even more worried about your own health, as Francine was for me, than our friendship. As the scales began to tip in favor against her battle against cancer, she just fought harder. My last conversation with her was Thursday night, when it was only hours before the unexpected death that occurred on Friday. She had texted me that her temperature was 101 and she was scared. Now, we've all received these texts, so I just texted back, well, I'll check on you tomorrow, see how you're feeling. But I don't know. Sometimes that little voice comes on, so I thought, I better call her. So I gave her a ring. We talked for about 45 minutes. And even though the call was supposed to be about her, it quickly turned into being about me and my personal dilemma, having just been laid off as of January 1st from a job of 6 years so that 2 Brazilian people could have my job in Brazil. "Darling," she said, "I don't have to tell you how good you are, do I? You're too good for that company anyway, and I've never liked it." I'm like, okay, but how are you feeling? So, at the risk of sounding corny, Francine, then as always, was the wind beneath my wings. Even up to that last, final, wonderful conversation. I knew she was sick, but she preferred to wait to hear from her doctor at City of Hope Friday morning before taking action. And I let her know that if Rob was busy, just call me. I can come up and take you. But what the next word I learned was that she had gone on to a greater place. But we all know she left this world brave, strong, and a fighter. She left statuesque. So let us all take a moment to remember our statuesque friend and family member, Francine York. Statuesque because she always knew who she wanted to be and accepted nothing less. Statuesque because she was a risk taker who refused to compromise her morals and her Minnesota upbringing. Statuesque because she was the perfect villain, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect woman of mystery, the perfect character in any role in which she was cast. Statuesque because she approached the health issues of herself and her loved ones with strength, vigor, and completely ready to fight and win the battle. And statuesque because she was never too good for her fans. Statuesque because she did have the beauty of Venus, and yet she also had a heart of gold. Statuesque because she helped save my life, making me strong, healthy, and reassured. And statuesque because she truly was a giant among giants. So in closing, I say God bless you, Francine York, my friend, my sister, my confidant. We did gossip an awful lot. I look forward to the day that we will be together again in the presence of our Holy Heavenly Father, with the family that you have missed so dearly, especially your parents and sister, and among friends who touched your heart, and more importantly, among those whose lives you changed forever for the better because you were you. You are the wind beneath their wings as well. And I want to say thank you. Goodbye.